is moving an amendment.
That's correct. I so move the amendment.
Minister to move.
Thank you. Thank you, Lás Cancora, and I want to thank the deputies for tabling this motion and facilitating the time for the change that had to happen. Unfortunately, I can't stay for the whole debate because I only got notice that we were taking it today when arrangements had already been made, which I can't move. But I absolutely accept the need to make sure that we are constantly debating this issue in this House, no matter what else is happening in public life, because it is so important. And yes, Deputy, it is heartbreaking to hear the very difficult stories from people who are not just in emergency accommodation, but also are in housing insecurity, or people who are having difficulty paying the rent or trying to save for a mortgage. All of the different people in our country today who are suffering because we stopped building houses when the economy crashed. And for years before that, we weren't properly building social housing in a sustainable way. And the culmination of all these factors, including now the increase in demand that we have from people returning home and everything else, has put a huge demand on the housing system, right across the country, in every part of the housing system. And this is what Rebuilding Ireland is about rebuilding our housing sector in a sustainable way over a period of time. We never said it could be done in 1 year, 2 years, or even 3 years. And there's actually 3 more years left in Rebuilding Ireland as a plan, 2016 to 2021, to make the corrections that we need to make and to do it in a sustainable way. And sustainable means things like social mix and getting it right, which means not building massive mono-tenure social housing estates. Sustainability means, I believe, higher densities in places like Dublin and other cities and urban centres where the infrastructure is, where people want to live. Sustainability also means building really, really good homes. I'm not going to put people in student accommodation for 20 or 30 years. It's absolutely brilliant for a student for 9 months. And it does take pressure off the housing system because then those 4 people aren't taking a house in Rathmines or Ainger Street or somewhere like that. They're actually going into student accommodation. But the houses we build have to be to the best possible standards because they've got to stand the test of time, and it's a person's home, so it has to be really good. So all of these things that we are doing over a period of time. And when we look at it now, we're roughly about halfway through Rebuilding Ireland. So it's a good time to kind of take a bit of stock in terms of where we're going. But if we're to talk about each of the challenges that we have or that people face in housing in Ireland today, unless we're talking about the root challenge of increasing supply, then there's no point talking about the other things because then it's just tinkering. We have to make sure supply is increasing fundamentally. And then in addition to that, that we do the other things that we need to do to protect people who are in difficulty at this point in time. And that's why the information that we have from the CSO is so important, Deputy Bruen. We all knew that we were using ESB connections. Everyone knew that. It wasn't a hidden fact. It was a stated fact that that was the best way to try and get an idea of what the increase in supply was. When I came into the office, I said, no, let's get an actual figure so we can really measure what's going on. And we did that with the CSO, and we have those figures. And their latest information for 2018 is really encouraging. 18,000 new builds last year, a 25% increase in the year before. But in addition to that, 2,500 homes came out of vacancy. These derelict and vacant sites that we can see up and down the country, 2,500 homes came out of vacancy. A further almost 800 homes were ghost homes from old ghost estates, which shows that the legacy of the crash is still with us. And there was about 3,400 student bed spaces. And I made the point, I think, already about why I think that's important. We also have important information today about house price inflation, roughly half of what it was in 2017 over 2018. And we know that that's linked to the increase in supply. So this increase in house prices is coming down. The increase in rents is coming down, but not for everyone. And that's why I have rent legislation coming through the House at the moment, which a number of deputies in this House have made very positive contributions to in terms of the ideas, and then how we can improve those ideas even further at committee stage, which we'll do. We also have the figures now from local authorities in terms of council housing. The increase in the stock of social housing last year was significant, in the thousands. But just looking at the build number, like 1 in 4 of every new home built last year was for council housing. 1 in 4. I don't even know the last time we did that. I'm looking into it at the moment to get the actual figure. That's huge. When you think about it, there's roughly over 70,000 people on the housing list. Most vulnerable, they need our help, and just under 10,000 people in emergency accommodation. But 1 in 4 of every house being built last year for social housing, that's a good thing. It's not a low target, it's a good thing, and we can do more. And I'll give you another percentage, though it might drive you crazy, was an 800% increase in social housing building since the year before Rebuilding Ireland. Rebuilding Ireland is increasing supply across the economy and in social housing as well. And that's a good thing because those new homes help people out of emergency accommodation or help them out of overcrowded situations and into new homes. And I've met the families who've experienced that. And that is the heartwarming story in this. For all the heartbreak that there is, and there's still plenty and too much heartbreak out there, it's very heartwarming when you meet a family who gets the keys into their new home. And I've met some people who've actually just started their family hospital into the new home. And it's fantastic. But we need to do so much more of it because there are so many people who are still in emergency accommodation or who still can't get their own home. In relation to the people in emergency accommodation, we saw in December a decrease, which is obviously welcome, but it could be seasonal. And for the families in emergency accommodation, we had a number of exits in December, which I think is welcome, exits into tenancies, not people going back to their own homes. We also had a decrease in presentations, which is welcome as well. We also saw a decrease in hotels. But a lot of more work needs to be done. And I met the local authorities yesterday and I drilled this home to them again. It's our 5th housing summit. And it's a good process of actually getting engagement and finding out where the challenges are. We need more hubs as a first response, only a first response. We need more homes on delivery. But we also need to do more work on prevention. And Dublin City Council is hiring new people at the moment that process is underway, more officers to get in and to help people out of emergency accommodation or prevent them from going into it. There are things I want to say about rent pressure zones, but I won't because we'll have other chances to talk about rent pressure zones. Just a brief word on HAP. There are roughly 900,000 people in the country renting. Renting is a safe, secure place for the vast, vast majority of people. It doesn't work for some. And that's why we're putting in extra supports, and we have. We did a lot of homeless HAP last year, which really helped people, prevent them from emergency accommodation. But the housing assistance payment allows people to have flexibility and choice in where they live. It allows them to continue working and earning more money without affecting their housing entitlement. And it also allows us to deliver social mix where there wasn't social mix planned in advance. So it does have positives to it. We have to recognise that. But we are not planning to put all of our weight on private sector to deliver social housing supports. We are rebalancing. Perhaps supports for 2018 versus 2017 were basically static. The increased delivery came through the increase in the stock. This year we'll do less through new HAP than we did last year. Moving forward with each year, we actually rebalance towards more people in 2021 being supported into new social housing homes than being supported into HAP tenancies, and we'll continue on from there. That's the trajectory that we're going in. I want to just address a couple of issues in the motion, if I may. The first thing was about the recategorisation issue, because it comes up again from time to time. No one was removed from the homeless figures. What happened was people who were not in emergency accommodation were counted by local authorities as being in emergency accommodation when they were not, and that was corrected, and I've been transparent around this. And the Joint Oireachtas Committee did accept that that mistake was made. And if you had found that mistake, you'd have to correct it too, because the important thing here is not to obsess about the numbers, but actually how do we help the people who are behind the numbers? And that's the one thing that I'm really disappointed about in that whole debate. People are focusing on a number when really it's the focus on the people behind the number and how we help those people out of emergency accommodation into homes. And that's exactly what we're trying to do in everything that we do. You say declare an emergency. I'm not quite sure what new powers you would take in declaring an emergency or how you would use them. I have looked to see what I could do if I declared an emergency. I can't get around procurement law, and I'm a little bit reluctant to go any further in planning changes, because if we cut standards or cut regulations too far, we end up with priority holes in the future. So please tell me what emergency powers you would take on and how you would do something just with a quick law change that we haven't been able to do over the past number of years, and what law that would be. I mean, genuinely, Deputy, because we've looked at this. In relation to the right to housing, this has been discussed. This is part of a number of socio-economic rights that have been discussed by the relevant committee here in the House. If you move too quickly for a referendum on something, you risk losing it. We have seen how a proper process has helped us win very important referendums in our recent history. And the other thing to say on that as well is that in other countries where they have made a constitutional change or a legal change in the right to housing, it hasn't ended homelessness, hasn't ended the need for emergency accommodation. So we have to be clear on this. I'm not saying I'm against having a referendum. I'm not saying I'm against the idea. I'm saying there's work still to be done. And while that work is being done, deliberative work, we'll do actual physical work in terms of building new homes. In relation to the time spent in emergency accommodation, 72% of families in Dublin in emergency accommodation are there less than 1 year. The average length of time in a hub is less than 6 months. And again, when you meet the families who have gone from a hotel into a hub, into a home, you can see and understand the benefit of the trajectory. They should never have been in a hotel. Families who go straight into a hub will get much more quickly into a social housing home as a result. So that's why we need more hubs as a first response and a temporary response. The number of beds for individuals is increasing, and we have more coming. Very recently we had a meeting of ministers responsible over the interagency group, so social protection, justice, health, myself and others. And I think next week the Taoiseach will bring a memo to Cabinet on additional supports that we're bringing in for people who are in emergency accommodation, some of whom are trapped in emergency accommodation because we don't know their rights or status yet, some of whom have long-term health needs and they aren't getting them because they're not in the right accommodation. So all of these new supports are going to help improve that. And in terms of Housing First, it's working really well. 88 to 92% retention rate, people not falling back into homelessness. We have a national director, we have a national plan, we have ambitious targets, and we will build on those targets, but we have to put the resources in first. We have to build this and get it right and not do it in the wrong way, or else people will start to change their mind around housing first. Again, we're trying to bring a number of different bodies who are involved in emergency accommodation into this new way of thinking. Most have come that way, but we just need to do it in a step way to get it really right. But supply is, as I conclude, key to all of our challenges. And the recent numbers that we're seeing on supply is really positive. But we won't stop here. 2019, it increases again, 2020, 21, 22, and we keep on going till we get this done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Minister.